Marriage had always seemed stable, peaceful, and predictable. For 8 years, Mark and I built a comfortable life together. 2 beautiful kids, a steady routine, and what most people would call a perfect partnership. But deep down, something felt missing. The spark, the excitement. It had long faded into the background. Then, Celeste invited us to a party at her home. "It'll be fun," she said. "Something new, something exciting." That night, the party seemed ordinary at first. Music blasted through the speakers, laughter filled the air, and people mingled with drinks in hand. Mark stood quietly by my side, his demeanor calm but detached. As I glanced around the room, I felt a strange pull, a need to lose myself in the crowd. And then, Joe, Celeste's husband, made an announcement. He held up a large glass bowl and said, "Ladies, toss your keys in here. Gentlemen, draw a key at random and spend the night with the woman who owns it. Just for tonight, no strings attached." The room erupted in cheers, and I froze. My gaze darted to Mark, his face a mask of shock and anger. "Did you know about this?" he whispered harshly. I avoided his eyes, knowing the truth would only make things worse. Yes, I knew, but I hadn't told him, fearing his reaction. "It's just one night," I said firmly. "A little fun. It's not going to change anything." But Mark didn't see it that way. He grabbed my arm and pulled me into the kitchen. "Evelyn, this is madness. We need to leave," he hissed, his voice trembling with anger. I stared back at him, torn between the familiar comfort of our life together and the wild allure of the unknown. "I'm staying," I said quietly. "I need this." The words hung heavy in the air as I walked back into the living room, leaving Mark behind. A pair of striking blue eyes caught my attention. He was tall, confident, and his presence was magnetic. As he approached, he smiled and said, "Care for a dance?" I nodded, taking his hand, and let myself get swept into the rhythm of the music. As we danced, the space between us grew smaller. His hands found my waist, and a shiver ran down my spine. The intensity in his gaze felt electrifying, and I couldn't look away. When he leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. His lips met mine softly at first, but soon the kiss deepened, igniting something I hadn't realized I'd lost. His touch was gentle yet commanding, pulling me further into the moment. Time seemed to stop, and nothing else mattered but the fire between us. But the illusion shattered when the door flew open. Mark stood there, his face a mix of shock and fury. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" he yelled, his voice echoing through the room. The man I was with quickly stepped back, but the damage was done. Mark's eyes burned with betrayal as he glared at me. "How could you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. We left the party in silence. Mark's anger was palpable, and I knew there was no fixing this. "Evelyn," he said coldly as we pulled into the driveway, "this marriage is over." I begged him to reconsider, but his decision was final. The next morning, he packed his bags and walked out the door. The divorce was painful, a bitter reminder of the choices I had made. I watched as our family unraveled, as Mark distanced himself and the kids struggled to understand. But amidst the heartbreak, I found a sliver of clarity. That night taught me the cost of my decisions, the fragility of trust, the value of what we had lost. As the months passed, I began to rebuild my life. I realized that every mistake carries a lesson, no matter how painful. That night wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the start of a new chapter. Some choices define who we are, and that night became a part of me, a reminder of what I once had and what I had to lose to rediscover myself.